Hello all of you pristine porcelain mugs that Nan only gets out at New Year's. Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I want to have a chat with you about game over screens, or more specifically, about game over screens that turned out to be like when I offered Josh help with his writing and then populate his scrawlings with bad knob jokes, not exactly what you thought you were going to get. I'm speaking, of course, about game over screens that actually toyed with you, only to reveal that, surprise, this isn't the end, my friend, and that there's more adventuring to be done. That's right, the games on this list just love a good old fake out and have done their best to mess with the expectations of the player, and their greatest fears of getting a game over when it wasn't their fault. I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 fake game over screens that you need to see. Number 10. Isaac accepts his fate. Or does he? Dead Space 2. After the first Dead Space ended on a downer jump scare ending, it was easy to believe that the sequel would once again put protagonist Isaac Clarke through the absolute ringer. In the game's apparently closing cutscene, Isaac finds himself stranded on the space station known as the Sprawl as its reactors melt down and his life support begins to fail. He simply sits down and appears to accept his fate. Grimly, the game's titles appear and the voice actor credits start to roll as Isaac takes in the carnage around him. But after about 20 seconds or so, the credits are interrupted by Ellie, who crashes through the ceiling in a gunship. The player is then given back control of Isaac as he flies to catch up with the ship and leap aboard, finally escaping the Sprawl in the process. And in an hilariously self-aware moment, the final seconds of the game tease another jump scare ending, only to subvert it completely with Ellie simply looking at Isaac and saying, "What?" It's utterly brilliant. Number 9. Fission Mailed. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Next up, we have perhaps the most famous, or is it infamous, example of a game over fake-out, found in Hideo Kojima's bewildering, ahead-of-its-time Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Now, putting it politely, at the end of the game, the narrative goes off at the deep end, and not putting it politely, the game disappears up its own arsehole. But before we get to that, we get a brilliant bit of fourth wall breaking in which a large number of bizarre things begin to happen. Things like the erratic behaviour of Colonel Campbell, who even urges the player to turn the game off, and later on, even going so far as to apply the now legendary Fission Mailed game over screen. What makes this last bit so brilliant is that you are actually still playing the game, simply using the top left box to carry on with your mission. God bless you, Hideo Kojima, you bloody madman. Number 8. MAKAROV Kills You. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. The Call of Duty series just loves to mess with its own player base. The first Modern Warfare dared to kill a player character in a nuclear blast and then quickly shift perspective to another hero, while Modern Warfare 2 controversially placed players in the middle of a terrorist attack at an airport and gave them the option to participate or not. Modern Warfare 3 featured a similarly shocking sequence and a rather brilliant rug pull, as when you're playing as one of the Russian president's bodyguards, you end up face to face with series villain Makarov. As he points his gun at you, you'll see an objective failed marker on the screen, throwing you into somewhat of a confusion. Was there something that you could have done? Well, no, it turns out that this was always meant to happen and was a very clever way at making the player feel as if they had failed. But what it actually is it's just turned out to be highlighting how the bodyguard had failed his mission instead. Number 7. Mario and Luigi Get High. Mario and Luigi Dream Team. At a glance, the Mario games are probably the last place that you'd expect to see the developers trolling their players, but several of the Paper Mario games in fact feature fake-out deaths, and in surely the most nerve-wracking troll job of all, so too does the 2013 3DS game Mario and Luigi Dream Team. When Mario and Luigi reach a glowing fountain at Mount Pajama, the player is given the option to drink from the fountain or not. Doing so will result in a 2-minute scroll of text as the game explains that the brothers fell into a deep sleep after taking a drink only to be awoken by the sweet smell of mushrooms, which they consumed in an uncontrollable hunger, causing them to grow as large as islands. as you do. However, soon the pair realise that they can't shrink back to normal, and suddenly a game over screen appears, causing many a trouser to turn brown with anger, and fear more likely if you've not saved recently. Luckily, after a while, the prince will wake you up and explain that the fountain restores health, but actually makes you have some messed up dreams. I mean, Jesus, talk about life lessons learned, eh? I ain't gonna be drinking from any puddles anytime soon, I tell you that much. Number 6, Sweet Sorrow, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Not to be outdone with the fission mailed rug pull in MGS2, Snake Eater really upped the ante as it afforded the players the ability to fake their own death with a rather convenient pill. You also got a revival pill which allows you to come back to life if you use it within a timed window. This gets cleverly flipped on the player later in the game, however, when they're facing off against the boss, the Sorrow. After spending a few minutes avoiding the ghosts of enemies you've put into the ground throughout the game, you'll catch up to the Sorrow, who will apparently kill you. Oh, brilliant, you think. Where did I go wrong? Well, it turns out that you didn't, as if you're quick enough to use the revival pill, you can overcome this hurdle. It's rather convincing though, and I'm sure that Snake is dead game over screen caught a few people out on their first time around. Number 5, Busted in Vegas, Need for Speed, The Run. Need for Speed The Run may not be a particularly good or memorable game beyond being that one Need for Speed game that featured on-foot QTE sequences, which we all asked for. Remember that? Do you remember that? No, I don't either, but it did boast one clever moment that actually caught most players unawares. In Stage 3 of the game's career mode, the player will end up trying to escape Las Vegas while doggedly being pursued by cops, only to eventually find themselves getting stopped by an impossibly large roadblock. The game flashes up the busted fail screen as usual, only to transition into a cutscene where police officers surround the player. However, that's when a QTE sequence then kicks off, allowing the player to break free from the cops, fight off a police dog, and escape after causing a diversionary pile-up in the street. Well damn, that was pretty convincing. It's a shame the rest of the title couldn't live up to that one moment though. Number 4, Sinclair wins, Killzone Shadowfall. I'd argue that many people remember this game more for its multiplayer than its pretty so-so single player. However, if you do see that narrative through to the end, you'll witness a rather salacious psych-out. The game ends with player character Lucas being mortally wounded by surprise antagonist Thomas Sinclair, who after a little villainous monologue shoots Kellen once more in the face as the game cuts to black. Some extremely realistic looking white on black credits then start to roll. Another 30 seconds pass before the screen starts to glitch out, and our perspective shifts to another hero, Echo, for the final 2 minutes of the game. From here, the player is able to launch a satisfying retaliatory attack against Sinclair, taking him out with a sniper rifle during a speech while swearing revenge for Kellen. After which some decidedly glossier and, yes, real end credits play out. It's sad, but a brilliant closer. Number 3, Denied by Hades, Kid Icarus Uprising. Now, while Kid Icarus Uprising might have had one of the most mental control schemes going for it, requiring a stand and more hands than even your mother has had over her body at the latest Gropapalooza event in which she is the main event, it's a bloody brilliant game and also my one per list. Yet, players might have been surprised to see that the main baddie Medusa appears to be done and dusted in only 9 chapters. Well, maybe it's just a short game. It's a bit of a shame. Hang on a minute, what's this? That's right, Hades himself comes into shot and claws through the end credits and declares that there's plenty of game left to go. It turns out that the player is in fact barely 1/3 through the main story, with another 16 levels to go once Medusa is defeated, meaning that the worry of being ripped off by your game is turned back into joy at getting more bang for your buck. Number 2, not quite the ending, Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive is, for lack of better words, absolutely insane. From its over-the-top combat to its ludicrously in-your-eyes, oh my god, it's in my eyes art style, the game dripped with fun and charm and a ton of mutants, of course. Therefore, when the player's character gets crushed under a ton of rubble, it's rather underwhelming. Surely this can't be the end for our plucky punk rock protagonist, right? Well, it turns out it's not, as while the game goes through a list of people who had been killed in the game's order of termination, the player themselves stands up in front of the screen and complains about needing a better ending. The game literally then rewinds a minute, with the player being miraculously resurrected out of the rubble and hurled into one final boss against the Physco building itself, which has now been turned into a giant robot, because why not? Now that, as the player says themselves after defeating the building bot, is how you end a game. And number 1, Sanity Effects, Eternal Darkness, SANITY'S Requiem. It couldn't really be any other game, could it? I mean, this is still a criminally underappreciated GameCube game, and also one that absolutely loves to mess with players. Throughout the game, the player must keep track of their sanity meter, a bar that drains whenever they encounter an enemy, and when that meter gets low, one of the game's many sanity effects will kick in, reflecting the protagonist's slipping grip on reality. Some are fairly simple and subtle, such as an off-kilter camera angle or slight changes in the environment, but some of them got devilishly, dementedly creative. The more ambitious effects include the game throwing up an extremely convincing blue screen of death, appearing to restart the GameCube boot screen, randomly killing the player, and even teasing that the game had actually finished with a to be continued screen teasing a sequel. It was awful at the time, but at the same time, bloody brilliant. And there we go, those were 10 fake game over screens that you need to see. Let me know down below what you thought about them, as well as any other things that I need to see in the worlds of faking out and game over things. But, after speaking about those Eternal Darknesses, sanity meter, let's just finish off by talking about your own sanity, my friend, because it is very important. Do yourself a favour and make sure that you're treating yourself as fair as you possibly can, both physically and mentally. And if you need help with problems, trust me, there are so many people out there that can help. Friends, families, even a guy here on YouTube, and obviously all the professionals out there that do this for a living. There is a huge support network at your fingertips, and you can find the right help for you. Trust me, people care. As always, I've been Jules. You can follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.